Hello. Have you ever wanted to do a deep dive on one of your beers and it's been difficult to put together because you have demand data in multiple systems? You might have some of it in your point of sale system. You might have some in whatever system you're using for your wholesale business. So it's hard to bring all that data together and really understand a full picture of what's going on with a single beer. What I want to do is show you a Tableau dashboard that does just this. So the first step is combining data out of both of these point of sale and wholesale systems, and then being able to see all things related to that beer. So how does it rank in terms of importance to us? How has that changed over time? What's the margin we're getting for each different way we sell it? How does that maybe compare to other beers we sell? What are some of the demand trends? Who's buying this beer? And how does it rank against all the other beers in our portfolio? So here's what that next dashboard looks like. This is our beer deep dive. And right now I have it filtered on our double IPAs. We could choose any other beer out of our catalog here or group of beer, but I have double IPA because a few things stand out. There's quite a bit going on this dashboard, but I think it's all really good information. So let me help walk you through it so you understand what you're seeing. The first step in this upper left is being 60 days into the current quarter, how much have we sold so far of double IPAs? And then how does that compare to the previous quarter, which would have been Q4 of last year? And then finally, is that up or down from the same quarter from last year? So we're up 30% since Q1 last year. So that's a really good sign. One point of comparison would be, how does this compare to all of the other beers that we sell? So we can see all for the rest of our beer portfolio, we're actually down a little bit from previous quarter. So double IPAs are performing worse there. But on the other hand, versus the same quarter last year, so last year's Q1, all of our other beers are down 20%, but double IPAs are up 30%. So this means double IPAs are carrying a good portion of our growth so far this quarter. And we have two more trend graphs down below. This first one is going to be a running total for each quarter, starting with basically 1 day into that quarter. And usually we have about 90 total sales days over here. We're going to see the current quarter we're in this darker blue. Then we're going to see the previous quarter, which would have been Q4 of last year, in this lighter blue. Brown, it would be Q1 of last year. And then we have a few other quarters listed in this lighter gray color. So you'll see that right now our dark blue line, which is where we are so far this quarter, is actually pretty close to where we were last quarter at being 2/3 of the way through, and then also last year. I guess one takeaway here is last year, this dark brown line is showing that, well, we really didn't sell very much through the second half of the quarter. But this other quarter, which would be Q4 of last year, sales really accelerated through the last month. So it'll be interesting to see what this dark blue line does as we finish up this quarter. Hopefully it'll be much closer to this versus the flatter from last year. And then down below, we're getting a breakdown by month of the different sales periods. So in this dark blue, again, we're looking at the current quarter. Lighter blue would be last quarter, and then brown is Q1 last year. So we can see what months we had spikes in demand or what months we had very low demand. Okay, next up is going to be a indicator of how important is this beer to our overall sales. And this is broken down by quarter again. We could look at this by month, but I think quarter is usually a good comparison. And in this case, I just have the last completed quarter, which would be last year, Q4. This would show that this beer was our 8th most important beer to our overall sales. As I slowly scroll up here, you can see what some of those other beers are that rank higher. I think a nice way to use this chart is to see are any beers growing or declining in terms of overall importance. You can see double IPA kind of bounces around. So it's generally not more or less important any one quarter from another. I'm going to real quick bring up one that's going to show more of a interesting look on that ranking. And what this is showing is this is our seasonal West Coast IPAs. In the last 3 quarters, West Coast seasonal IPAs have been extremely important for us. They've been our number 2 and 3 highest sales beers. And that really grew a lot from a couple years ago. Let me go back to double IPAs. Okay, now further over on the right, this is going to be similar chart to what we looked at on the last dashboard. And this is showing the relationship between revenue per ounce sold versus the cost per ounce sold. And now what we're trying to do is we're highlighting the beer that we're looking at. In this case, this was our double IPA seasonal, is in blue. And then we're looking at all other beers that we sold the same way in gray. So we're able to see, how does this beer compare to the rest of our portfolio? And we're going to be looking at tap room, wholesale, kegs, and cans. So this first one up would be tap room, keg. So this would be draft beer. And this is showing we sell double IPA for more per ounce than the rest of our portfolio, which probably makes sense. We probably charge the same amount, but pour a little bit less of it because it's a double IPA. But we'll also notice that the cost per ounce is higher on a double IPA, which again makes sense. The cost of ingredients are more for a double IPA. I guess one good thing about this one is it's showing we're getting the same margin, so 92% margin of double IPAs versus all of our other beers. And that's because even though it does cost a little bit more to make, we pour less of it. So we get, when it comes to revenue per ounce, we're charging enough to cover that additional cost. One thing that doesn't look as good is all the other different ways that we can sell this beer, whether it's kegs wholesale, whether it's cans wholesale, or cans out of the tap room. You'll notice it's much flatter, each of these lines, as compared to this one. And what that's showing is that even though this double IPA costs more to make, we're not making as much more in revenue as we sell it as we probably should be. And that's why the margin percentages that show here are much lower for our double IPA in blue versus all of our other beers. Just as an example of how to read this one, this shows that all of our other beers for wholesale kegs, we make a 73% margin. But double IPAs, we only make a 65% margin. So I'd say that would be concerning. This would be an indicator that, well, maybe we need to raise prices for our double IPAs in order to make up for the additional cost of ingredients that go into them. So down in this middle part on the bottom, we're going to see how are we selling double IPAs. We have, in this case, this is showing wholesale. This data is coming out of QuickBooks, and then tap room, which is out of Square. And we're showing, is it a keg coming out of a keg or a can? So we can see how our volume is breaking down between the two. In this case, we sell more double IPA out of the tap room than we do for wholesale. Next up, we're looking at the top 10 customers that are buying double IPAs. We have Whole Foods, a restaurant, a bar, hotel, etc. So we can walk through and see how much we're selling to each of those top 10. And then are they buying cans, which would be, again, this yellow bar, or are they buying it out of a keg, which would be the silver here. So quite a bit of variation between customer. Some, like a Whole Foods or a supermarket, is just buying cans. That makes sense, right? But we see it like a restaurant in this case. While they sell the majority, or they're buying mostly kegs, they also buy some cans from us. Okay, and then last one up, this is going to be our top 15 customers overall. And what we're looking at here is how much double IPA do they buy in blue versus all other beers they buy from us. So in this case, because double IPA, as we notice up here, isn't one of our highest selling beers, we don't see all that much blue, but we see Whole Foods buy some, we see these restaurants buy some, a hotel. But it makes up still a relatively small percent of their overall purchases. Let me focus on something that we sell a little bit more of so you can see some more variation there. Let's do our hazy IPA, which is our one of our flagship beers. So this is our #1 highest selling beer each time. Now we can see a little bit more variation of these top customers. We have some that buy a lot of this, But what I think would be good to use this chart for is to understand some of these customers like Resort A or Resort B or Restaurant E, they don't buy any of this beer, or they buy a very low amount. So I think what we could do is tell our sales guys to go to these customers that aren't buying this, and we can give them examples of other customers in their area or in their segment that are buying a lot of it, and see if we can encourage them to buy more of it. For example, we could go to Restaurant E and say, you're not buying any of our flagship hazy IPA, but Restaurant A up here is doing a great job selling it. There's a lot of demand from the customers. So we could encourage Restaurant E to buy this in the future. Okay, so that was our beer deep dive. I like that dashboard for a few reasons. One of which is just taking data out of both a point of sale and a wholesale system and combining it into one, really giving us an efficient look at all things related to the demand of that beer. We were able to see trends. We were able to see how the ranking of this beer compares to others in our portfolio. Also what the margin was, who's buying it. So it really gives us a holistic view of a beer that we can now use to maybe set a good sales strategy for it, and then modify some of our actions to sell it more effectively, or at least have a good plan in place how that beer fits amongst our whole portfolio. If you have any questions with this, or you'd like to see some of your demand information in a dashboard like this that updates on a periodic basis, please let me know. My email is jeremy@centralcoast-analytics.com. Again, that email is jeremy@centralcoast-analytics.com. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.